All right, so you guys really outdid yourselves this time. You sent in so much great material about understanding fast-spoken English. It's
Like
fantastic.
a good one.
We've got everything from like, you know, official textbooks and language learning guides to it looks like some people just sent in transcripts of conversations they've had
Oh,
or
wow.
overheard or, just stuff they found online.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, so in this deep dive, what we want to do is like equip you with some strategies you can actually use in the real world.
Mm.
So, you're not just stuck feeling lost when you hear a native English speaker talking at, full speed.
Yeah, it's a common experience. People spend so much time studying and, they might even be pretty comfortable
Right.
with, the English they've learned. But then suddenly yeah. And it's that jump from the often like very structured,
Yeah.
deliberate pace of like, learning materials
Mm-hmm.
to the spontaneous flow of like, actual conversation.
Yes.
It's the difference between, listening to like a carefully prepared TED Talk
Right.
versus overhearing, a couple of friends chatting in a cafe.
Yeah. Or even worse, like a group of friends.
Yeah, exactly. All those are
They're all talking over each other and
talking over each other. Yeah, slang words flying around.
yeah. And you're just like, wait, what language is this?
Exactly.
So what we want to do is help you guys bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Go from the textbook to the real world.
That's you.
And a lot of that is not just knowing more words. It's about understanding like how English actually works when people are using it naturally.
It's those patterns.
Yeah.
It's the cultural nuances.
Yeah.
It's that rhythm, the music of the language.
The music of the language, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, so one of the sources you guys sent in talked about something that I think is really important to start with.
Okay.
And that's this idea that like relying too much on perfectly scripted English can actually hold you back when you're trying to understand fast speech.
Right. Yeah, because, so many textbooks, so many, learning resources present English in this, very structured,
Yeah.
idealized form.
Yeah.
Which is great for, building a foundation, but it doesn't always reflect the reality
Exactly.
of how people actually speak.
Great.
And one of the sources gave a really great illustration of this contrast
Okay.
between, the formal way of saying something like, "Excuse me, may I inquire about the location of the nearest restroom?"
Oh my.
versus the much more common, "Hey, where's the loo?"
Right. Or even just bathroom.
Bathroom.
Yeah. Keep it simple. Like nobody really says, "May I inquire about the location?" unless you're like,
Yeah, you're trying to be funny.
yeah, or you're trying to be like super polite.
Or you're at a really fancy place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, in an everyday conversation, it's much more direct.
Right.
So if you've only ever learned that like super formal way of asking,
Yeah.
you're going to be totally thrown off guard.
You're gonna be like, what is happening?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even understand the question.
So, okay, so how do we bring this gap?
Mm-hmm.
How do we go from, the textbook to, real life?
Yeah, and that's where I think, the materials you shared really highlight the importance of engaging with like unscripted content.
Yes.
Things like reality TV shows, podcasts, even vlogs.
Yes, vlogs.
Yeah, where people are just, being themselves.
Exactly. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, but it's so hard.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming.
It can feel overwhelming at first.
Especially at first.
Yeah, like you're just catching like random words.
Yeah, snippets here and there.
Yeah.
But the key, and one of your sources
Yeah.
pointed this out beautifully, is just persistence.
Yes.
It's like listening to a new genre of music that you've never heard before. At first it might just sound like noise.
Like chaos.
Like chaos. But the more you listen to it,
yeah.
the more your ear starts to pick out the melodies and the rhythms,
The pattern.
the patterns, and you start to understand it.
Yeah. And one of the sources specifically mentioned travel vlogs.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
Which I think is such a good example because
Yeah.
you're seeing people in like everyday situations. They're just like walking around talking to people.
They're not reading from a script.
They're not reading from a script.
Yeah.
So you get to hear like the slang,
The mumbling.
the mumbling,
Yeah, all the little,
the ums and ahs.
exactly, all the stuff that makes it real.
And that's what makes it real.
And one of the sources said it's like training a muscle.
Yes.
The more you do it,
Yeah.
the stronger you get.
The better you get at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about unscripted content, but it's not just about the speed or the informality. One of the other really big takeaways from your sources was the importance of listening to different English accents.
Accents, yes. That is crucial.
Because English is spoken so differently around the world.
Oh, yeah.
You've got American English, British English, Australian English,
Don't forget Canadian.
Canadian, oh yeah.
So many.
And then even within those countries, you've got like regional accents.
Oh my gosh, countless regional accents, yeah.
So if you only ever hear one type of English,
Yeah, you're going to be in for a shock.
you're going to be in for a rude awakening.
Yeah, because you step outside that little bubble and suddenly it's like,
It's a whole new world.
it's a whole new language almost.
Yeah, and one of the sources had this hilarious example about the Australian phrase.
Okay, let's hear it.
I reckon we should grab a papa.
A papa.
I reckon we should grab a papa.
I mean, if you're not Australian, you'd have no idea what that means.
You'd be like, what is a papa?
Yeah, like is it a person? Is it a place? What is it?
But it turns out it just means pizza. They're just saying, I think we should get a pizza.
That's great.
So that's a perfect example of how, different accents can really
You throw you through a loop.
throw you for a loop. Yes.
Yeah.
And the more you listen to different accents, the more flexible your ear becomes.
Exactly. You're not stuck in just one way of hearing English.
Yeah.
You're ready for anything.
Okay, so we're listening to unscripted content, we're exposing ourselves to different accents, but here's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
One of the sources talked about this idea of anticipation as a
So-
strategy for understanding fast English.
Okay, so like predicting what someone's going to say.
Yes, exactly.
That's interesting.
So it turns out that our brains are actually wired to predict patterns,
Oh, that makes sense.
including in language.
Yeah.
So native English speakers do this all the time without even realizing it. Based on the context.
So it's like they're filling in the blanks as they go.
Yes, exactly. And the source gave some great examples.
Okay.
Like if someone starts a sentence with, I'm so hungry, I could
Eat a horse.
eat a horse, right? Or grab a bite.
Yeah, you can kind of guess where it's going.
Yeah, your brain automatically jumps to those common phrases.
Right, because you've heard them before.
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing is this isn't some magical ability that only native speakers have.
Right.
It's something that anyone can learn.
But that's good to know.
Yeah.
So how do we train ourselves to do that?
Well, the source had this really clever suggestion.
Okay.
They said to try pausing videos or shows that you're watching
Okay.
and actually trying to guess what the person is going to say next.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and you don't have to get it right every time.
Right. It's just about getting your brain thinking in that way.
Yeah, thinking ahead in English.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the better you'll get at anticipating those patterns.
And that makes the whole process of listening less stressful.
Yes, because you're not trying to understand every single word.
Yeah, you're getting the gist.
So you're getting the gist. You're following the flow.
The flow, yeah.
Okay, so anticipation is huge.
Yeah.
But what about when the words themselves start to sound like they're blending together?
Oh, yeah, that's a real challenge.
In fast speech, the words kind of lose their individual clarity.
Yeah, they mush together.
Yeah, they mush together. And one of your sources talked about this idea of linked words and dropped sounds.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so basically when people speak quickly, they often connect words together.
Yeah.
And some sounds get weakened or even disappear completely.
I've noticed that native speakers will often say, did you see it?
Did you see it?
Yeah, instead of did you see it?
Exactly.
We're like, I actually becomes I actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the source even mentioned how in some British English accents, the H sound at the beginning of words can disappear.
Oh, right. So in his can sound like in is.
Yeah, and is, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're not used to hearing that.
Yeah, it can sound like a whole different word.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we deal with this?
Well, your source had a really interesting suggestion.
Okay.
They said, try mimicking these patterns yourself.
Oh, so practice saying did you instead of did you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Even though it might feel a little weird at first,
Yeah.
it actually trains your ear to recognize those sounds when you hear them.
So it's by producing those linked words and those drop sounds,
Yeah.
we're actually helping our brain to decode them
Exactly.
when we hear them in fast speech.
You're tuning your ear to the music of the language.
The music of the language, yes.
Yes.
The source also mentioned the importance of filler phrases.
Oh, those little things that people say.
Yeah, you know what I mean, or "Oh," at the end of the day.
Right, right.
And I think a lot of language learners find those really confusing.
Yeah, because they don't seem to have any specific meaning.
Yeah, it's what are they even saying?
Yeah,
But actually, those phrases serve a really important purpose.
they do. They kind of act like glue.
Yeah.
They hold the conversation together.
They give the speaker time to think.
Yeah.
or, to emphasize a point.
Or just to, keep the flow going.
Keep the flow going, yes.
Yeah.
So it's important to recognize that those phrases are there,
Hmm.
but don't get too caught up in trying to analyze every single word.
Yeah, it's more about the overall meaning.
Okay, so building on this idea of compression,
Hmm.
let's talk about contractions and reductions.
Oh, yes, those are everywhere in fast speech.
Everywhere.
Yeah, native speakers use them all the time.
All the time.
It's like second nature.
Yeah, and one of the sources gave some really classic examples,
Hit me with them.
like gimme that becomes gimme that.
Give me that.
Want to becomes wanna becomes gonna.
Wanna.
Gonna, and then even further reductions like let me and Trina for trying to. And I remember the first time I heard someone say gimme, I was like,
What is that?
I had no idea what they were saying.
Yeah, it sounds like a made-up word.
Yeah, and it took me a while to figure out that it was just short for give me.
Right.
So the source recommended that we actually practice using these contractions ourselves.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So even if it feels a little strange at first,
Yeah.
it'll help your ear
Yeah.
get used to hearing them.
Exactly.
And then you'll start noticing them everywhere. In movies, in songs, in podcasts.
In real life.
In real life, yeah.
Okay, so we're getting better at recognizing how individual words can change in fast speech.
Mm-hmm.
But what about when people don't even use complete sentences
Oh, yeah, that happens all the time.
all the time?
In real conversation, people don't always speak in these, like, perfectly formed, grammatically correct sentences.
Right.
It's much more messy
Yeah.
and fragmented. People pause, they change direction mid-sentence. Sometimes they just leave thoughts hanging.
Unfinished sentences.
Unfinished sentences, yeah.
And the source gave a great contrast between, like, textbook English and real life English. So in a textbook, you might see the sentence, I will attend the meeting tomorrow because it is important to discuss our goals.
Right.
But in real life, it's probably going to sound more like, yeah, I'll go tomorrow. We got to talk goals.
Yeah, much shorter, much more to the point.
Yeah.
Less formal.
And sometimes it's even more extreme. Like instead of saying, can we discuss this now? I think it's urgent.
Yeah.
Someone might just say, so this thing, can we, urgent? Yeah.
Yeah, you get the idea.
Yeah.
Even though it's not a perfect sentence.
So if you're expecting people to always speak in complete sentences,
Yeah, you're going to be constantly confused.
you're going to be so lost.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with this?
Well, the source emphasized the importance of focusing on the flow and the context.
Okay.
So pay attention to the speaker's tone of voice, their body language, the situation.
Yeah.
Because those nonverbal cues can give you a lot of information,
Right.
even when the words themselves are incomplete.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that even in our own native language, we don't always speak in perfect sentences.
Not at all.
It's just part of natural human communication.
Exactly. We prioritize getting the message across
Yes.
rather than being grammatically perfect.
Okay, finally, let's talk about something that adds a whole other layer of complexity.
Okay, bring it on.
Cultural context.
Ah, yeah.
So understanding fast English isn't just about understanding the words.
Right.
It's about understanding the culture behind the words.
The meaning behind the meaning.
Yes, exactly. And this is where a lot of language learners really struggle.
I can imagine.
Because so many English phrases and idioms make no sense.
Yeah.
If you try to interpret them literally.
If you translate them word for word.
Yeah, like take the phrase, it's a piece of cake.
Right.
If you don't understand the cultural meaning behind that phrase, you're going to be like, what are they talking about?
Yeah. Where's the cake?
Yeah, why is it easy?
Right.
But once you understand that, it just means it's easy.
Oh, okay.
Then it makes sense.
It clicks.
And the source also mentioned how humor and cultural references can really trip people up.
Oh, yeah. Especially references to like popular movies or TV shows.
Or sports.
Sports, yeah.
Music. Like
Probably.
all sorts of things that are specific to English-speaking culture.
Right. If you're not familiar with those things,
Yeah.
you're going to miss the joke.
You're going to miss the joke.
Or you might even be offended
Yeah.
without realizing it.
So the source recommended that we actively try to build up our cultural bank.
Okay. Like a savings account?
Yeah, a savings account of cultural knowledge.
I like that.
So watch English language movies and TV shows.
Read books.
Read books. Listen to music.
Follow English-speaking social media accounts.
Yes, all of that stuff helps.
Yeah, the more you immerse yourself,
Yeah.
the more those cultural nuances will start to make sense.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
If you hear someone use a phrase that you don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
just ask.
People are usually happy to explain.
Yeah, most people are happy to explain. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
So let's just do a quick recap of the key strategies.
Okay, sounds good.
For understanding fast-spoken English.
Hit me.
Number 1, engage with unscripted content.
Yes.
Reality TV shows, podcasts, vlogs, all that good stuff.
All the good stuff.
Number 2, listen to a variety of English accents.
American, British, Australian, Canadian.
You name it.
As many as you can.
Number 3, practice anticipating what the speaker's going to say next.
That's a good one.
Based on the context.
Yeah.
Number 4, train your ear to recognize linked words and dropped sounds.
By mimicking those patterns.
By mimicking those patterns. Number 5, master those contractions and reductions.
Give me the good.
All the good ones.
All the good ones.
Number 6, get comfortable with incomplete sentences.
Because they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And number 7, don't forget about cultural context.
Build that cultural bank.
Build that cultural bank.
Yeah.
And remember, guys, this is a process.
It is.
It takes time. It takes practice.
Be patient with yourself.
Be patient with yourself.
Nope.
Get discouraged.
You're not going to get it perfect overnight.
Exactly.
Just keep practicing.
Just keep practicing.
And enjoy the journey.
So as you continue your English learning journey, I want you to think about this.
Okay.
How can becoming more aware of like the rhythm and the flow and the cultural nuances of English help you connect more deeply with native speakers?
That's a great question to think about.
And I also want you to consider which of these strategies we've talked about today you can start using like right now.
Yeah, what's one small step you can take today
to
improve your listening skills?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.